All right, y'all, what's going on? Welcome to the Monday Night Live stream. How's everybody doing tonight? How's everybody feeling? We got a good crowd in here tonight. Looks pretty good so far. Folks, y'all know how I get down, so hit the like button, right? So get this thing pushed up in the algorithm a little bit. I'm not going to keep y'all hanging around for too long, so cuz got a lot to cover tonight. Right? We're talking about metabolic health issues. We're going to get a little bit deep, but I'm not going to overcomplicate the process, right? All right. So, but first off, folks, where y'all tuning in from? City, state, country? What kind of crowd we got here? Right? How y'all feeling tonight? Definitely sound off. Let's get a little roll call going on here. Cali girl, what's going on? Good to see you in here. G Ellis, what's going on? Sylvia, how you doing? All right, got my folks in here. Jay, how you doing? All right. Angelina, Annie, Miss D, big shout out to you tuning in from Raleigh. What's going on? Here we go. Kells Bells. All right. Let me look in here. Shaman, is that how you say it? Shaman, am I saying it right? All right. So, Ingrid, what's going on? Good to see you in here. See some familiar folks in here. Iowa, TKM, big shout out to you tuning in from Iowa. Isaiah, what's going on? Big shout out to you from Dallas, Texas. Yes, yes. Nashawn Brown, Fort Liberty, what's going on? Good to see you in here. Smart Girl Chronicles. Big shout out to you tuning in from Atlanta, Georgia. All right, there we go. So, by the way, can y'all see me? Y'all see me clearly? Because on my end, it looked like the YouTube stream hasn't exactly caught up to where I'm at. If I'm still on camera or what. It looks like I am. Oh, you said close? Close, but not quite. All right, well, I apologize for messing up the name. You gotta sound it out for me phonetically so I can get it right. But you can see me? All right, sounds good. All right, so yeah, definitely let's get into it. Tonight, right? Now, y'all know a lot of times what I've talked about as far as like the whole weight loss and you know, chronic illness reversal thing. We deal with people a lot of times who don't have an appetite, right? Because if you're chronically inflamed, that can cut off your appetite. So most people who are overweight because a lot of the times they undereat, right? You're malnourished. So it's a mixture of undereating, number one, and number two, food poisoning. Then on the other side of the ledger, you have people who are always exhausted, obese, and hungry, starving even, right? You know, you go for any length of time, let's say an hour or 2 hours or something like that, without a meal. And you know, you want to eat your arms off. Big shout out to Karen, right? She likes to use that phrase. I want to eat my arm off. And so I want to talk about that a little bit, right? The hunger craving. So we got to talk about how do we eat so that we can increase our energy level while also improving our metabolism and getting our hunger cravings in check. So this is a big thing that matters because this is where we talk more about blood sugar, insulin, leptin resistance, this kind of thing. And the interesting thing here too is that this isn't just something that affects people, you know, with a terrible diet. This also affects people who, for example, do a whole food plant-based diet, or people who are raw vegans. This actually affects a lot of raw vegans where, you know, they have a fruit dominant raw vegan diet constantly eating all the time and just hunger cues every hour or a couple hours, right? And then what happens is over time you become subordinate to your appetite, right? And you can develop massive food cravings because of this. So we got to talk about this. One thing we have to understand is that there is no such thing as a magic bullet, right? There is no or dietary strategy or training strategy or strategy of any kind that you can apply to your life all year round every year. It doesn't really work like that, right? You have to shift. You have to pivot your strategy, right? If you engage in a strategy for too long, you go past the point of diminishing returns, and it can even work against you, right? So things like timing is important, you know, when to buy, when to sell. So you can compare this to, let's say, the stock market, right? Finance. Buy low, sell high, right? Know when to sell, know when to cash out, right? Know when to exit. You sit on a particular investment for too long, you get burnt, right? So we got to respect the volatility scale of the human metabolism. This doesn't just apply to finance or nutrition or this applies to anything, right? There are universal principles, right? So let's start with strategy, okay? And the reason why I want to start with strategy is because this is going to really clarify things moving forward, all right? We said, what about underweight, exhausted, always hungry? Does it apply? It does apply. It does. But when you're underweight, the only difference is you're not doing this necessarily to lose weight, right? When you're underweight, that's when you got a bit of a different issue. And the case may be that you're always hungry because you don't eat enough, and you don't eat enough of the right things. And I'm going to get into food choice, because a lot of people who talk about fixing your metabolism, they don't really get too into food choice. They tend to focus on carbs, fats, proteins, and not enough about vitamins, minerals, amino acids, that kind of thing. Food choice. And y'all know I like to talk about food choice. I like to get real granular on these streams, right? I'm not stingy with the information, so to speak. So, not to say that anybody else is, you know, I'm just saying, right? No shots. I don't want no smoke with nobody, right? It's all good. Even though I do like to argue and debate and whatnot. So when it comes to strategy, right? There's a spectrum. There's the strategy spectrum. You have a conservative approach, which is a very safe approach, very minimal risk. And then you have a very unsafe approach. You maximize risk for a larger reward. The conservative approach, and then you have the aggressive approach, basically. The more conservative in your approach, the less of a return you will get, which means you will have to follow that strategy over a much longer period of time. All right? Then you have the aggressive approach, and this is going to be a more short-term strategy. We're talking like 4, 8, or 12 weeks. Right? The more, so like, for example, if you do a juice fast, which they work, it's a very aggressive approach. It's even a risky approach. It's hard to do for most people. And you do it for 21 days or 30 days or something like that, and then you're out. If you do it longer than 30 days, you start having problems, right? You have a more conservative approach. You eat in abundance. Your meals are very balanced. Everything is very even-handed. Everything is very evenly balanced, right? And it's not a difficult approach, right? So all of your foods taste good. You can eat as much as you want, or these types of things. So a conservative approach, and I'm very conservative in my approach, right? When it comes to coaching, because I prioritize safety for most of the time. This is on me, right? If you want to take a more aggressive approach, we can do that. I just generally don't start there. I start with a more conservative approach so that we can have wiggle room to go somewhere else. If you start really aggressive, you don't have anywhere to go after that, right? Not to mention, if you start really aggressive and you fail, it really takes the winds out of your sail. So, for me personally, I would say, all right, well, let's take a conservative approach for 4 weeks, maybe 8 weeks, and see where we get. This way, you don't develop a poor relationship with food. This is why, like, when I start people with a conservative approach, is to create some normalcy, right? Most people are extremely stressed out. Poor sleep quality, stress at work, family stress, kids, whatever the case is, right? Feeling uncomfortable in your own body, emotional stress, and all this stress. If you put an aggressive approach on top of that, chances are your chances of success in this approach are going to be very minimal. And the reason why is because you can only handle but so much stress at a time. And sometimes a stressful approach to a solution can be the straw that breaks the camel's back. So when you take an aggressive approach, you want to make sure that you're really ready for it. So I'm going to talk about an aggressive approach and what to expect. I'm going to talk about that tonight. All right, so that you know, I want to tell people the whole truth. I don't glamorize anything. Right? I'm very technical in my approach. I give you all the straight facts, right? So I'm not trying to sell you on a given approach. I'm going to tell you the cons, the pros, etc. Nothing's a magic bullet. So the conservative approach works for most people. The only time you want to take, well, not the only time, but the best time to take an aggressive approach, a risky approach, is when you're so far towards the margins that you have to, right? So, for example, let's say the US dollar inflates at 8% every year. So let's say you have a certain amount of money in your savings account, and your savings account yields 5% dividend, or a 5% yield, right? But the inflation is 8%. If you do that every year, year over year, right, 5% return, 8% inflation, you are losing 3% in value on your savings every year. Savings account is the most conservative approach you can get to your finances. So you hear from your grandparents, your parents, save money, spend wisely, conserve, right? Savings account or whatever the case is, right? But if you don't beat that 8%, you're just at 5%, you're bleeding at, well, it's not 3%. Oh, yes it is. 5%, 8%, you get it, right? So every year you bleed that 3%. So even though you're saving more money, that money that you're saving is losing value over time. So now if you had a more aggressive approach where you put that money, instead of into a savings, you put it into something that yielded you a 14% return. So you go from bleeding that 3% to then beating the 8% and then being in the positive as a result. Right? So even if you lose the 8% from the 14, that's fine. You're still in the positive. You're still in the green. That's success. Right? This is how your strategy works. This is what you have to think about. Now, if you're at the margins, meaning you've got all types of gut health issues, you feel terrible all the time. When you eat, your body has visceral reactions to it and all of this kind of stuff. You're experiencing all types of crazy gas, bloating, constipation, really high blood sugar, whatever, and you feel terrible, lightheaded, lethargic, fatigue, dizziness, crazy stuff, blurry vision. People get all kind of nastiness, right? If you're experiencing those things, you're really close to the margins. So that's when you want to take a more aggressive approach. A conservative approach at that point is not really going to cut it. Right? So there has to be tighter guardrails in your approach. So what can we leverage to improve our metabolism? Well, we can have our food choice be really, really solid. And then we can implement a tight eating window, right? Like intermittent fasting. And then we can leverage exercise. These are like the primary three things that we have in order to improve our metabolism. Exercise, like walking or resistance training, solid food choices, and a smaller eating window. So instead of eating for 12 hours a day or 10 hours a day, maybe you eat for 4 or 6 hours a day. Right? Now, let's say you can't exercise. Can't do it. You got physical injuries or whatever the case is. And then let's say the problem with the intermittent fasting that you have is the fact that you're always hungry. You eat and you're hungry again, you eat and you're hungry again, and then you don't want to eat late night, but you're the hungriest late night. So then you end up overnight snacking and capitulating and breaking your fast and all of this. So the intermittent fasting doesn't work, right? So now what do you have? Now you have to tighten up on your food choices then. So which means that your food choices got to be really, really solid. And there's going to be less wiggle room in that regard. Right? So you're going to have to, out of those 3 buckets, you're going to have to make adjustments depending on how much leverage you have. You have 3 different forms of leverage. You don't need to be super, super strict in every one. But the less leverage you have in those 3 buckets, well, you got to be really solid on one. Let's say eating in and of itself is really uncomfortable for you to do. That's when you want to say, okay, well, then you need to lean more into fasting. You may want to do that because, well, maybe you don't have much of an appetite or whatever the case is, because maybe, let's say you have a stomach infection. Maybe you have H. pylori. So eating is problematic. Well, now what you can do is, let's say you do herbal teas with things that are antibacterial. Right? Let's say you do garlic, ginger, turmeric, oregano, things like this. You have herbal teas and supplement with black seed oil or something like that. And that helps to kill off that infection. Plus you fast, and the fasting starves the infection. Just give you an example of like approaches that you would take to something. Right? It's too painful to exercise. It's too painful to eat. Well, herbal teas, supplementation, fasting. And you can do a fast for anywhere from 3 to 7 days to give yourself some wiggle room, and then you can start introducing foods afterwards. Right? It's just an example. Going back to the other example, though, of the food cravings, and you can't fast, you can't exercise because your knees or whatever, or maybe let's say you're wheelchair bound. Maybe you say, well, I want to do 30 days where I just eat grapes, watermelon, and leafy greens and drink my herbal teas. And I'm going to do that for 30 days. I'm going to go on a grape and watermelon fast and leafy greens. I eat as much grapes and watermelon as I want during that time period. And I drink my herbal teas and things like that in between my meals. That can actually be an extremely effective strategy. And you may just say, what's the big deal with grapes and watermelon? Why is that so effective? Let's get into the metabolism thing. Because you have people who literally, they reverse all types of metabolic disorders by doing this. Like, for example, you can have a person who's diabetic. And it's like, well, how does a diabetic reverse diabetes? By just eating grapes and watermelon. The more grapes and watermelon you eat, the more insulin sensitive you become. That's why. If you don't put any other foods in, like fats or whatever the case is, let's say you just do maybe tender leafy greens like baby kale, spinach, or whatever. Matter of fact, let's set that aside, because let's say that those foods bother your gut. The cruciferous greens give you gut pain. But then you just stick to the watermelon and the grapes, and you do that for, let's say, 30 days straight. And you can lose a ton of weight doing this. This is almost like guaranteed weight loss. And my understanding is it is guaranteed weight loss to do that. Grapes and watermelon. One of the biggest reasons why that is because these are foods that are very rich in iron, copper, vitamin K, potassium, and they're mostly water. And the carbohydrates are very simple sugars in them that are very easy for your body, for your cells to take up for energy. Right? These are some of the most hydrating foods you can eat. The unique thing about them is how water-rich they are. The more water-rich a food is, the easier it is to metabolize and use for energy. So let's say you're always tired and you're always hungry and you're struggling to lose weight. If you just had a diet of just watermelon and grapes, right? Even seedless grapes, yes, even seedless grapes. And you were just running through grapes and watermelon. Yeah, that would definitely work. It's one of the closest things you can actually get to a magic bullet. Copper. People sleep on copper. Copper is a big deal, right? The citrulline in these foods, the malic acid, the vitamin C, these are a big deal. The potassium. A lot of your issues, a lot of metabolic issues usually come from dehydration, right? If you're always hungry all the time, chances are is because your brain is not getting enough oxygen. Like, let's say you have blurry vision, headaches, high blood pressure, These are issues where your brain is not getting enough oxygen. And your brain is not getting enough oxygen because you're dehydrated. And your blood pressure is high because you got vascular constriction because you're dehydrated. And you're dehydrated because there's too much fat being stored inside your liver, and that's causing an inflammatory response and causing vascular constriction. Right? Now here's the thing. You do the watermelon and the grapes over time. This is a bit of a hack because you're not really consuming any fats. But your body has to use fat. Because the more insulin sensitive you get after eating those watermelons and grapes, and the more hydrated you get, essentially what happens is you're getting all of these electrolytes from these foods. You get all of this vitamin C and copper and vitamin K from these foods. So what they're doing is they're reinforcing your gut and reinforcing your immune system, right? Repairing your gut lining, your digestive tract, reinforcing your gut microbiome, right? Allowing your good gut bacteria to flourish. And these are just foods that are extremely anti-inflammatory, so they bring down the stress in your body. You get more free serotonin as a result, so you get better sleep quality. Right? Because what happens is your gut produces more serotonin, and that leads to more melatonin production and better sleep quality. And as you eat these foods, what happens is you start to slowly and gradually release the stored fat from your liver because you're not getting incoming fat, right? The biggest reason why the insulin sensitivity improves is because when you eat watermelon and grapes, for example, gastric emptying is at warp speed. Obesity, a lot of times for people, is a traffic jam. It's really what it comes down to. It's not the amount of food, it's the buildup. It's the traffic jam. Insulin resistance in and of itself is a traffic jam. It's a side effect of a traffic jam. You have an abundance of material sitting in your gut, and you're constantly adding to it every day. And chances are you're eating meals where the gastric emptying is slowed down. Whether it be starchy carbohydrates, fats, fiber, and then you're also dehydrated. So this slows down the digestive process, creating a traffic jam. This causes an inflammatory response on the body, which causes degradation over time where your mitochondria becomes weaker because of all this intracellular inflammation. And it's destroying your mitochondria as a result, right? So this is also why a juice fast works so effectively, is because juice, I mean, it just flows in and out. So the glucose uptake from juice, the vitamin C, the beta carotene, the alpha carotene, all of this, the potassium, all the electrolytes, it just gets taken right up in your digestive tract because your gut doesn't have to do much work in order to pull nutrients from that juice. It's expressed nutrients that your body doesn't really have to work for. That's the magic of juicing. There's no obstruction, there's no traffic jam. It's just juice in and out. So the longer you juice, you basically hydrate your body, because after all, it is juice. So it's just water and just minerals and vitamins. Constantly. Water, minerals, and vitamins. Water, minerals, and vitamins. Throughout the day, every day, for the entire duration of that juice fast. And so you lose weight as a result because you remove the traffic jam and the insulin sensitivity improves. Same thing happens with the grapes. The only difference is the grapes have the fiber. The watermelon has the fiber that serve as a prebiotic to feed your probiotics, which are your beneficial gut bacteria. So they're gut builders, right? So this is why that works. So the beauty of like a fruitarian diet where it's like it's just a bunch of fruit and whatnot is because fruits, they digest quick. So they move through your digestive tract quick. And there's all this beautiful fiber that coats and protects your stomach lining, your gut lining, right? You got the fiber that expands in your gut and binds up harmful toxins and metabolites and drags them out of your digestive tract. and this fiber expands, right? And so as it expands and moves through your gut, it has this cleansing effect. It's like a sponge just pulling things through your digestive tract, binding up all of these toxins and waste products and metabolites and free radicals, all this kind of stuff sitting in your digestive tract, right? It pulls it all out. It's like a cleansing mechanism. And then it's fully expanded in your colon, and then you have this beautiful, smooth number two, this smooth move, right? When you sit on the porcelain throne, right? And it's a beautiful thing. It's just effortless, big, beautiful log, right? Just come right out. And you experience that every day. And you might experience 5 bowel movements like that in one day. And it feels really good to be regular because you can feel your gut clear out. So this is what happens, right? And so then you're drinking your ginger tea, you're drinking, you know, with your basil and cayenne pepper, things like this, your moringa tea, right? Your herbs and stuff like that. And then you're getting let's say, you know, the additional magnesium through magnesium supplementation or something like that, right? So you could do that as well. Magnesium glycinate supplementing with that. So it's just all the grapes, the watermelon, cucumber, right? So you can add cucumber also. And so what happens is this allows you to clear out your lymphatic system, clear out mucus from your gut. This allows you to hydrate and oxygenate your cells, get more oxygen to your brain. And this is extremely medicinal as a result. It's a very effective strategy, right? And a lot of people will do this strategy and get amazing results from it. Here's the catch. Repeatedly just eating grapes and watermelon every day for 30 days. Here's the problem. There's 3 problems. Number 1, struggling against food cravings because you're not eating enough. You don't have enough watermelon and grapes. So you're just hungry all the time. You have this vicious hunger. So you're just burning through tons of grapes and watermelon, right? And it can be kind of sickening. You're like, I'm tired of eating grapes and watermelon. The second problem, you have food you want fat, you want salt, right? You just start thinking about all of these heavy, savory meals. You want sauce, you want something warm, you want something a little bit more thick, you want something with a little, right? Because your hunger starts picking up and you start having more energy and you start thinking about these foods, right? So under eating and then just being sick of eating grapes and watermelon, right? These are like the 2 main problems. Third problem, the watermelon's out of season. So I'm just relegated to grapes. So now I'm even more confined. Now I'm relegated to grapes and cucumber. Cucumber is it's not very calorically dense at all, so it's not filling. So now we just rely on the grapes. And then what happens if you go a week and like all the grapes in the store are terrible? I can't find good grapes. Sometimes it's like that. Like I can't find good grapes in the store. I don't know what's going on. Right? Now what do? I'm interrupting my grape fast because they don't have some good solid grapes in the store. What else can I do? Right? So these are like the main issues. It's difficult to stick to just eating grapes and watermelon. Number 2, you may not have access and you may not be eating enough. So you may even just feel tired and hungry all the time, even though you're just pounding watermelon and grapes. Now, being tired and hungry all the time, crushing watermelon and grapes, this is going to be a thing that you more so experience early on, right? Because let's say you're leptin resistant and you're struggling against hunger all the time. Remember, obese, exhausted, and starving. If you cut all of the fats out of your diet and you're just eating these foods, your body, once you're not getting those fats coming in, that hunger is going to feel crazy. Because your body is not used to metabolizing fat for energy. And the thing is, when you eat grapes, your blood sugar will come up and it'll come back down real quick. And then once it comes back down, like an hour later or something like that, and your blood sugar comes down to 110, 105, 100, 90, it starts getting down there. And the more you do this every meal, watermelon grapes teas, what happens is The fats, your body's like, I got to tap into fats for stored energy because that gastric emptying is happening quick. So your hunger cues are kicking on, and you start developing a little bit of like a sugar craving and a salt craving. So you may actually have to like drink water, right, with a pinch of salt in it. And that helps stave off the hunger cravings. Right, that's one way to do it. Another way to do it is matcha tea. Matcha tea has a little bit of caffeine in it, and that works to kind of curb the appetite a bit. So you could do that in between meals. So you do your matcha tea, let's say early morning and early afternoon. Right? Twice a day is good enough. If you're going to do a third one, you should probably switch to like chai tea, for example. And that can help with the cravings. But the thing is the reason why you feel really hungry like that, doing a strategy like this, is because you have to make a hormonal switch where your body then switches to metabolizing fats for energy. You have to wait it out. It takes time for that hormonal switch to happen. It could take you a week. It could take you 2 weeks. It may take you 2.5 weeks. Maybe. Right? It's different from person to person. It depends on how you do it. So just, you will, well, it's not a guarantee that you'll be really hungry, but the chance is there. And that hunger can feel really uncomfortable over time. And you're going to have to embrace that hunger. Because what happens is you have to wait for the hunger to come and pass. If you capitulate to it, you blow the strategy. It's not going to work. You need to wait out those hunger cues, because those hunger cues are your body signaling to you, give me more glucose. You have to say, no, more glucose, eat your fats. It's like a little kid, right? Where they eat everything else on the plate and then they leave the peas. They leave the vegetables, and you don't let them get up from the table until they eat the vegetables, right? Or they want to, I want cake or dessert or whatever. You go, no, eat your dinner. Right? So you got to tell your inner child, no, we're sticking to the strategy. You got to put your foot down. Eat your fats. Eat your stored fats. Right? You keep doing that, what happens is your body adjusts. And it's a beautiful thing that happens. Your body gets very effective at switching back and forth between burning fat for energy and burning glucose for energy. And then your insulin starts coming down, and then your blood sugar starts coming down. This is what happens when people do like this raw fruitarian stuff, where it's just straight fats, really high carb, unlimited carbs, just fruits, and that's it, right? Watery foods. Melon, mango, grapes, all this type of stuff. But the thing that works the best is the watermelon and the grapes and the cucumber, right? But you can also throw in like blueberries, strawberries, things like that. So you can throw in your berries as well in there. And the reason, but especially what works, is the red grapes. Anything with that dark pigmentation, that dark red or purple pigmentation, right? These are the highest frequency foods. Right, so when you look mathematically, as far as frequency is concerned, these are the highest frequency foods, right? The foods that are on this color spectrum. Violet is the highest. Right, so you got your violet, you got your reds and your blues. Right, the blues signify the violet, right? And your greens. So cucumber, green grapes, that bright green, the kiwis, this type of thing. So you stick for that long enough, your metabolism adjusts. And you get loaded up with vitamin C over time, especially when you add in things like grapefruit, right? So you load up with the vitamin C, you load up with the potassium, you load up with the copper, the vitamin K. You're getting your citrulline, which is a vasodilator. You're getting increased serotonin production. All this beautiful stuff starts happening because you're hydrated all the time and loaded up with antioxidants. This strategy is not a shortcut, because there are other strategies that work faster than this. This is not the high risk strategy. It's not. right? This is actually, I wouldn't say it's conservative because it's not. It's an easy strategy to mess up. That's why it's not conservative. It can be a bit difficult to stick to. So it's an aggressive approach because of the confinement. There's a lot of things that you got to reject and tell yourself no. Right? No fast, no whatever. But if you do a strategy like that, you just do it for 30 days, maybe 60 days, something like that. So we're looking at, let's say a maximum. You do this for a maximum of 12 weeks. If you got to lose like 100 pounds or something like that, this could be a good strategy to do. Right? It can be kind of expensive depending on your area. This is the thing that you got to deal with, right? Let's talk about the strategy that you can take if you don't have these fruits available. What's another strategy? This is going to be very repetitive, but also very effective. The lentil strategy. Lentil soup, right? So you do red lentil soup, seasoned with like all kind of curry and cumin and basil, parsley, garlic, onions, things like that, right? Mushrooms, leafy greens, this type of thing. And you just do soups. And it's just mushrooms, lentils, and things like that. No fats though. So no nuts, seeds, none of that. You're just doing your soups. And it's just legumes, mushrooms, and leafy greens. Right? And the beauty of this strategy is everything is low on the glycemic index. And you're really leveraging herbs and spices. Right? But you're having these soups and whatnot. This is like breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So you can make a huge pot of red lentil soup. Season it however you want. Right? It could be spicy curry or whatever the case is. And it's just lentils, mushrooms, leafy greens, herbs, spices, that kind of thing. Right? So every meal you're dipping into that. The beauty of something like the lentils, you can also do this with peas. You can do split peas. You can do, you can put like chickpeas in there. You can do red kidney beans, that type of thing. The caveat though, here's the caveat. The reason why I'm saying the red lentils is because those are the least aggressive on your gut. You do too much chickpeas, if you got something like Crohn's or colitis or diverticulitis, this can be painful. That's why I'm talking about the lentils, right? You need something that's soft and it's not going to be too abrasive on your gut. If you frequently experience the gas and the bloating and all of that type of stuff, you may not even be able to do things like broccoli or whatever. It may just have to be tender herbs. Right? It may just have to be tender herbs. It may just have to be watercress, spinach, arugula, things like that. Soft, easy to digest foods. You start doing your cabbages and your broccoli and all of that type of stuff, it may aggravate your gut. Right? So you want something to be soft and gentle on your gut. So like the lentils are very good with that, especially the red lentils. Now here's a little dietary hack that you can do. If you want to throw something like chickpeas or red kidney beans or something like that in there, you soak them for like 8 hours. You cook them, right? And then you run them through the blender. And the blender will further break them down. And this gets rid of excess lectins and excess phytates and things like that. Things that your gut may be sensitive to. So you really break all that down. And that makes it way easier on your gut. But the thing is, you're not eating outside of that. It's just the legumes, the herbs, spices, the leafy greens, mushrooms. So it's another strategy that you can do. And the thing is that this is a little bit more satiating. You're not going to be as hungry as quick because these things, you're not going to get the rapid gastric emptying with these foods like how you would get with the fruits. Gastric emptying is quick, it's not as quick. But these are foods that are more savory, they're warm, they're more filling because they're more starchy. But they'll reflect very good on your blood sugar because these are foods that are not going to send your blood sugar up because they're low on the glycemic index. So if you have a vested interest in avoiding like high blood sugar, this is a great strategy to do. So you're using ginger, turmeric, cumin, parsley, basil, little cayenne pepper, things like that. These are antifungal, antibacterial, antiviral. These are foods that are, let's say you add something like kimchi or sauerkraut or something like that, and you have that along with your foods, right? You get the probiotics from those foods and the prebiotics from your foods. This helps to build your gut. So if you need to actually proliferate and grow your beneficial gut bacteria, that can be something that you add in addition as well to build your gut. These are all gut-friendly foods. So you could just soup it up, right? This is a lot easier to adjust to. So this is a more conservative approach that's very effective. All right. So that's the opposite thing that you can do from the, because that's not raw at all. You're cooking all that. However, when it comes to like things like leafy greens and stuff, you may not want to cook those. You cook your beans and your soups first. You put your greens in afterwards. So you chop up your greens and stuff like that. You put those things in afterwards. Because you don't want to overcook your greens, because then you cook all the nutrients out of them. Right? The reason why the greens are very important to get into these types of meals also, because the greens are very rich in potassium and vitamin C. And that vitamin C is very important for repairing stomach lining, gut lining, all this type of stuff. And vitamin C is really important. Hair, skin, nails, eye health, etc. Right? So those are eating strategies there. And you don't need to put necessarily a time window or any type of intermittent fasting to do that. And you don't have to exercise for those strategies to work either. Right? Exercise will make those strategies work quicker. But the exercise is not necessary for it to work. Now we can get even more conservative than that. Let's say, because the next step up from that, because you can do a strategy like that, but it runs its course. Right? Because eventually you're going to have to start adding some fats back into your diet. Because you need the omega-3 and the omega-6 essential fatty acids. Right? You need your alpha-linoleic acid and things like this. So it's a very effective strategy, but you know, the soup one, you can do that for longer than the fruit one. With the fruit one, you would have to diversify your fruits a little bit more, and then you start to add in some nuts and seeds, right? So that you can cover your fats and things like that. With the soup thing, you can add in like some sliced avocado, things like that. The soup one is the biggest difference between the soup one with the legumes and the raw option with the fruits is the soup one is more rich in protein. It's a lot more rich in protein. And it's a lot lower on the glycemic index, but the gastric emptying is slower. So that one is more of a conservative option. It just takes a little longer to work. The raw one works quicker. I don't know how much quicker, but it works a little quicker. Also, reducing protein intake has its benefits also, because protein can feed cancer. So if you're in the habit of feeding too much cancer, if you're in the habit of consuming a lot of protein, that protein can use to grow tumors and things like that and feed some things you don't really want. Menstrual cycle, right? The raw option would work better for women's health as far as your menstrual cycle. So you'd want to consider that. So like, let's say you deal with things like endometriosis, you deal with PCOS, things like this. Well, you may want to do the more raw option. Right? It's a thing to consider. But both are very viable options though. Right, so you can go either way. I wouldn't really necessarily compare the two as far as effectiveness, because they're both very close in effectiveness. So when you pivot from these strategies, what do you go to, right? When you start adding in your fats and things like that. Well, when you add in more fats to your diet, it depends on how much you add. Let's say you go from having virtually no fats or very minimal fats in your diet you would increase then to like 10%, 15% of your macros coming from fats. So let's say you add an avocado a day, right? Let's say you're eating raw and it's just all fruits and stuff. Let's say you add an avocado a day, right? With the raw vegan diet strategy, when you come out of that, well, it depends. How active are you? Are you doing resistance training? Whatever the case is, what's the next goal? I'm a very big fan of doing smoothies and adding in hemp seeds. It's one of the best sources of protein you can get, and it's very rich in omega-3 essential fatty acids, right? So your fat sources then become things like avocado, hemp seeds, flax seeds, pumpkin seed kernels, pistachios, right? Things of this nature, walnuts. You don't want to just start dumping tons of fat in at a time, but you want to ramp it up probably like to a good 10-15% of your macros. So maybe you consume 40, in between 40 and 60 grams of fat to your raw diet. Say start with 40 and you gradually escalate up. Let's say you do something like that, right? So you can normalize the metabolizing of the fats and things like this. And then, of course, as you eat more fats, you don't need as much carbs. So you can bring that down a little bit and level things out. So if you add in your fats, it's a ratio. So naturally, you're going to bring down your fats a little bit. I mean, your carbs a little bit. If you're deciding you want to do resistance training, you want to build some muscle, well, I'm a very big fan of adding in like other protein sources, like let's say pea protein isolate, right? I like to use naked pea protein. I'm a big fan of those. It's one ingredient. It's just peas. And so what they do is they just get the protein from the peas, and it's in a powdered form, right? It's raw. I use it. It's extremely beneficial. I don't necessarily put it in all the plans I write, but it does have its place as effective. It's a good base for supplements. So let's say, you know, I'm making a smoothie, and let's say you got a big old juicy banana mango smoothie, or, you know, mango pineapple, whatever the case is. You can add in that naked pea protein in there as well with a couple scoops of that hemp seeds, right? That's a phenomenal way of getting a lot of protein in your diet, right? 27 grams in like one shot on average. 3 tablespoons of hemp seeds is like another 10 grams. So now we're up to 37. The mango, depending on how much you use, can have another few grams of protein in it, right? So you accumulate protein. So you can have that one smoothie, and that thing can have like 40 grams of protein in it, right? So let's say you did that twice a day. And then you did that twice a day, and then you tightened up your eating window. Because let's say you still have some more weight to do. So you change up your strategy, right? So you shorten your eating window to like 6 to 8 hours, right? You do that smoothie, you're still having your fruits and things like that. You have your 2 smoothies and your 2 fruit bowls, for example. And then you shrink your eating window to like 6 hours, and you're doing more resistance training. Now, if you do that, that's a strategy where you're using all 3 of your buckets, right? Your diet bucket, your fasting bucket, and your resistance training. Why would you want to do this? Well, the reason why you would want to do this is because to improve your metabolic health, you need to train your mitochondria. Your mitochondria are the energy energy producing factories of your cells, right? So you have a cell, and then around the outer layer of the cell, outer perimeter of the cell, you have these mitochondria, right? Now, if your mitochondria are deconditioned, you have a lot of intracellular inflammation, your mitochondria will be short and small and kind of sparse, right? So you get all kind of energy leakage and whatnot. If you are always hungry, insulin resistant, and you're tired all the time, it's probably because your mitochondria is just very underdeveloped. So you need more mitochondria, and you need longer mitochondria, right? Fasting is a great way to improve your mitochondria. And then when you increase resistance training, you're engaging in resistance training. It's another way to improve your mitochondria. Now, what happens is if you engage in that intermittent fasting, it's a great way to offset increasing the fats in your diet, right? And then when you implement the resistance training, This will force your body to respond by creating more mitochondria and stronger mitochondria, so you get less energy slippage. And your body is more able, is better at metabolizing carbohydrates and fats for energy, or glucose and fatty acids for energy. Right? So that's the benefit there. Just doing juice fasts, it's a great, it's a great start, but that's not the end point. A very big mistake that people make is they do the raw vegan grapes and watermelon, and then they do it for X amount of time, they lose a ton of weight, and then they go back to eating normally. Oh, I'm just going to go and just eat like a regular normal person. Not so fast. You can't go from having a solid strategy, end the strategy, and then have no other strategy that you follow. You're not out of the woods yet. Don't jump the gun. Because you still haven't trained your mitochondria. Not really. You've made some improvements. Better digestive health, right? Better gut flora. You're more oxygenated. Your body's more mineralized. That's good, but you still got some more work to do, right? So eventually you're going to have to train. One way that one really beneficial thing that fasting does is fasting accelerates autophagy. Autophagy is a process where your body basically breaks down old and damaged cells and materials and gets rid of it, or recycles it and creates new cells, right? So you have like these zombie cells in your body. They're not healthy, they're not dead, they're somewhere in the middle, and they're just sitting there, right? And they're inflammatory. These zombie cells are inflammatory, and they're often a precursor for cancer, right? Weird growths and stuff. So autophagy helps to clear out this excess material. And this is a part of congestion, because what leads to congestion are like these zombie cells or old damaged cells and this type of stuff, right? It's kind of like exfoliating. You know, you want to exfoliate to get rid of the dead skin on the surface, right? To get to what's underneath. Get some more oxygen to what's underneath. It's kind of like that. It's like internal exfoliation, right? A little bit different in nuance, but you get the point, right? So the deeper you get into a fast, that's when autophagy starts to really set in, and that typically happens after a 24-hour period. If you fast for 16 hours or so, you're not really going to get much autophagy from that. But you can get autophagy in that 16-hour fasting window if you're doing resistance training along with it. Right? So there's two ways. You can eat and fuel up, and then during your fasting window, you can engage in resistance training. It's one way to do it. Another way is you train, then you eat, and then go into your 16-hour fast. If you train and then eat, this allows muscle recovery to happen a bit quicker, and it's a safer strategy. If you train during a fast, it's more catabolic, but you get heightened autophagy as a result. So the question is, do you want to maximize for muscle growth, or do you want to maximize for autophagy? It really depends on which one you choose. Train, then eat maximizes and maintains muscle growth. Training during a fast maximizes autophagy. If you're doing this for health reasons and you really want to challenge your mitochondria and push your body into autophagy, it'd be a good idea to train during a fast if you're doing this short 16-hour eating window. I mean, 16-hour fasting window, 8-hour eating window. So now we're getting a little bit more into the fasting, right? And the autophagy. That could be very good for people with Crohn's, colitis, diverticulitis, people who are insulin resistant, people who are diabetic. Could be very beneficial. However, it depends on how bad of a shape you're in and the condition you're in, what you've been doing. So you want to be able to pace yourself. You don't want to go too aggressive and then be on the struggle bus and feel terrible. And you're like, well, I don't know if I feel terrible because my metabolism is poor or because I'm not recovering adequately from the training. I'm not quite sure which it is. Or it could just be everything, right? Because resistance training, training very intensely, and then the fasting, these are stressors. Fasting is stressful, and then for your body to switch from, you know, relying solely on glucose for energy to then switching into being more fat adapted, that's a stressor. That hormonal change is a stressor. And then pushing yourself in the gym, that's a stressor. As far as a training strategy, I'm a big fan of this. You do resistance training. Let's say you pick an exercise. Let's say squats. And you squat with a particular weight. You get one set and you push that set as hard as you can. Right? You get every last rep out of that one set. Your heart rate is going to skyrocket. The muscles are just going to be worn out. You push it as far as you can get. You push that set to failure and then you back off, you stop. Just one set per exercise. You do one exercise and one set. You push it all the way as hard as you can and then you back off. This has phenomenal benefits towards training your mitochondria because the deeper you get into a set, your body has to be better at recruiting and finding energy to facilitate that movement, as well as the recovery from the movement. Because not only does your body need to have the ATP, right, adenosine triphosphate, necessary to produce muscular contractions, but when you finish the set, your body, your muscles then have to go through this metabolic process to then refill the cells with new energy. Right? So you got to have enough energy to facilitate the work, and then you have to have enough energy to facilitate the recovery. It's this double-ended thing. And that's a great way to train your mitochondria, right? When you push it really hard like that. So your body responds by creating more and longer mitochondria. And then your muscle cells can switch back and forth between glucose and fatty acids for energy. It can adequately utilize both. This is how people are able to like run marathons and stuff. It's basically you're training your mitochondria and muscle recruitment and whatnot. So your body is better at pulling energy from wherever it can get it. And it can do it over a very prolonged, sustained period of time. Right? So if you're going to do like the intermittent fasting thing, it's a good idea to leverage the resistance training along with it. Because the 16-hour fast in and of itself is not that effective. So you may say, well, I did 16-8 and I had 16-hour eating windows. I didn't really lose any weight. It's like, well, I mean, if you're not training, it's not really going to have a whole lot of a benefit. The fast is not long enough. So if you're not going to train during your fast, well, your fast has to be longer. It has to be at least 24 hours. And that's where we get into this strategy of like the alternate day fasting, which is a pretty aggressive strategy, to be quite honest. So I wouldn't necessarily go from a watermelon and grape fast to like alternate day fasting. Wouldn't necessarily do that. So you could do, if you do this 16-8, just understand that that's a pretty conservative approach, especially if you're not training during the fast. If you're not going to train or do resistance training during the fast, you should at least walk several miles, like 3 to 5 miles a day. And the walk is going to be the most beneficial during the fast. Now, the walking, for most people, is not extremely strenuous or difficult, right? It can be quite easy. So during your fast, you walk 3 miles at a pace where your heart rate could be in between 110 and 115. So for the whole 3 miles, you maintain a heart rate of 110 to 115 during that fast. And that accelerates your fat metabolism and the depletion of glucose stored in your liver. So if you have a congested liver or a fatty liver, this is a great way to reverse that. Now, if you did the grape and watermelon fast, or you did the soup strategy like I talked about before, chances are by the end of that, you're not really going to have a fatty liver. Right? You might be a little insulin resistant, maybe, right? But you're not really going to have a fatty liver. That approach does most of the work. You're not out of the woods, but you're pretty close. So doing something like this particularly helps to drop weight. just walking to 3 to 5 miles, right? Heart rate in between 110 and 115. All right. So wearing like a Fitbit that tracks your heart rate, right? Or an Oura ring or something like that, or Whoop, gets the job done. So you can do an aggressive strategy. After you do an aggressive strategy, you come out of the aggressive strategy into a more conservative strategy. So the reason why you would go from an aggressive strategy to a more conservative strategy is because you got to respect the volatility cycle. And you got to engage in the volatility cycle deliberately. So let's talk a little bit about the volatility cycle. The volatility cycle is basically this undulating phase, right? The volatility cycle takes place in your life regardless of whether you want it to or not. This is just laws of the universe. Even the planet itself goes through a volatility cycle. So winter, ridiculously cold, and then you go into spring and summer, ridiculously hot. You go into fall and then winter and then ridiculously cold. Undulates. I probably should say winter's down here and summer's up here, right? And they go back and forth as waves. Same thing, day and night cycle. Really bright, nighttime real dark, daytime real bright, same thing, undulation. Anxiety and depression, again, volatility cycle. Heightened state of anxiety sustained over a prolonged period of time leads to a crash, depression. Right? You get out of the depression, you ramp up, you're back into the anxiety. Right? Now, the depression anxiety thing happens if you're not engaging in the volatility cycle with respect for the volatility cycle. When I say that, what I mean is we want to leverage the volatility cycle in a way where we close the volatility. So instead of having these big spikes and drops like this crazy, we shorten the spikes and drops. So instead of getting this, we get this, right? And the smaller the volatility is, this is viewed as stability. So as we shrink the ebbs and flows, this is how we create stability in our lives. But the only way we really do this is if we engage in the volatility cycle deliberately. You have to deliberately engage into it, engage with it, and get out in front of it. This requires strategy, right? So we got to have a healthy respect for the spectrum. So conservative approach, aggressive approach. You go to an aggressive approach, and then you recover from the aggressive approach with a more conservative approach. The reason why you do that is because when you come out of the aggressive approach, you may just want to go buck wild. Celebrate. Y'all lost 80 pounds. I feel great. It worked. Blah, blah, blah. I'm going shopping, buy all kind of clothes. Da, da, da. Whoop-de-whoop. I'm going to eat, go out with my friends. Blah, blah, blah. Right? You do that for a week or two. You go buck wild, right? For a week or two. Right? Third week, you get real little buck nasty, right? You go from being buck wild to being buck nasty. And if you get to buck nasty shows up on the scale. Buck nasty could look like, oh, I'm not really having the bowel movements like I was before. Oh, the weight's starting to come back, right? This is buck nasty is in the room now, right? Basically, never go buck nasty, right? So you get a more conservative approach. So we go back to the 3 buckets, and then you go, okay, I want to leverage the 3 buckets and come up with a more conservative approach, right? So if you do that and you get out in front of the volatility cycle and you shrink the volatility in a deliberate fashion, you avoid the yo-yo and the weight. Up, down, big, little, big, little, big, little, right? You avoid all of that because you're not sucked up in the cycle, right? Now I'm going to illustrate something for you, all right? And this might make you laugh a little bit. let's address the ladies here. All right, I want to address the ladies here. And fellas, you might laugh at this too. Let's talk about dating. Real quick, not too much, just real quick. The first abusive relationship that you get into, a lot of times, it starts with your parents. It's your first abusive relationship, is your relationship with your parents. The second abusive relationship is the abusive relationship that you develop with yourself. The third abusive relationship is the relationship that you get in an intimate relationship with somebody else that you're dating or something like that. The longer you stay in that abusive relationship, the more abuse you take, and now you start to get down into the bottom end of the volatility phase, that low state, right? And you get low enough, once you hit that rock bottom, if you're fortunate, you leave the relationship. You get out. And you go, I'm done. I'm free from this abusive relationship. I'm just going to work on myself. I'm going to do me. I got to focus on myself. So you're like, I'm going to lose weight. You know, I'm going to work on my career. I'm going to go to school or whatever the case is, right? And you pursue your own well-being. Now you're coming back up on the volatility cycle. Now you're climbing on your way up, right? Let's say you lose weight. You do an aggressive approach. You lose weight real quick. You get a new job. You start making some money. You change your clothes. You're feeling yourself. And then you're ready to get back into the dating market. And then you meet a guy and he checks off all the boxes. Great guy. But he proposes to you. He says, I want to get married. You're like, oh, he's a perfect guy. Yes. Right? You're engaged. Then you start to get cold feet a little later on. Because you're like, he's a great guy. He's wonderful, treats me well. You know, he's successful. He's this, he's that. He checks off the boxes. He's 6'1". He's got abs, whatever the case is, right? He's educated, blah, blah, blah. But there's something missing. I don't know. I'm not feeling the thing. So you get out of that relationship. Right? You get out of that relationship and then boom, we start to hang down a little bit. We start trending down on the volatility cycle. Right? And that guy, he goes on YouTube and he starts seeing all these videos from these red pill folks. Good guys finish last and they want the Pookies and the Ray Rays and the ball, that they whoop-de-whoop, all that type of stuff, right? And he's in his feelings and all of this, and he's mad, he's emotional, he's hurt. And she's like, I'm sorry, right? Ugh. Hopefully, she doesn't get into another relationship with a new person who is abusive. But she might, and a lot of times she does. Back in that bottom range of the volatility cycle. Go through that whole thing again, get out of that abusive relationship. By the time that happens, she's like, you know what? I'm done with this whole dating stuff. I can't anymore. I'm entering my celibacy phase, right? We've heard of the celibacy phase. I'm not dating. I'm not going to have Tinder. I'm just going to blah, 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 right? Here's the thing. Remember what I told you. When you want to deal with the volatility cycle, you have to do it deliberately. This is the only way you break the pattern and you shorten the volatility spikes. You have to go back to the beginning of the spectrum and you have to address where the problem started. If your first abusive relationship was with your parents, then you have to resolve that. Right? Second abusive relationship was the one that you developed with yourself when you were a child. Right? So now you have to address your inner child. When you learn to live with your inner child and you heal the wounds with your inner child, right? You get remothered or refathered, whatever you got to do, and you heal those wounds. That's working on yourself. So that when you meet the guy that checks off all the boxes, you don't get cold feet again and feel like something's missing. Fellas, same thing. The dynamics are slightly different because men are under different pressures, but it's the same thing, right? So we're not doing the videos, watching the YouTube videos with dudes in front of a camera complaining about women. We don't do that. What do? We develop a solid strategy and we learn to live and respect our inner child. We live with our inner child. Your inner child is with you all the time. It's that little 9-year-old that you ignore. Sometimes you tell them to shut up because you don't like what they're saying. And your little inner child throws a tantrum and sabotages you, kick you in the leg or trip you or something like that because you're constantly ignoring your inner child. And then you have your higher self and your lower self, your best self and then your lowest self. And your lowest self then develops a pact with your inner child to sabotage you. They gang up on you. So now you have your lower self piggybacking on the hurt feelings of your inner child, and then they're tripping you up. And this is where self-sabotage comes from, right? It's very important to understand that. Because if you don't respect that, if you don't engage with that deliberately and heal those wounds, it's going to be very difficult to engage in an aggressive strategy. Because now the self-sabotaging is the thing that happens real early on. Interesting thing is the conservative strategy doesn't really work for you either if you haven't healed those inner wounds. Well, why is that? The conservative strategy is supposed to be easy. It is easy. But you have to have a lot more patience for that one. Right? I've had people, they do a conservative strategy. They feel good. They're like, I got more energy. I sleep better. My blood pressure is better. My blood sugar is better. I'm not really seeing the weight loss though like I want to. I want to see rapid weight loss. Right? They're like, I saw this Instagram or YouTube and this lady, she said she lost 90 pounds in 24 hours, right? She sat on the toilet bowl and just 60 pounds out. Right? I'm exaggerating about that, but you know, you see the crazy thing. You know, in one picture, you know, they're shaped like a potato, and then the next picture, they got the six-pack abs and everything like that, and they're flexing and all of this, right? And we see that, and we say, oh, I want that to be me. I want the faster results, right? And the thing we got to understand too is that not everything is about speed. Where are you in the volatility scale? Because you got to hit that peak first so that you can deal with the stress of an aggressive approach. Right? So there's some negotiating and some planning to go into, because the aggressive approach is going to be a lot of things that you can't do. There's going to be a bill that has to be paid. Right? There's positive freedoms and negative freedoms, and you're going to have to give up some positive freedoms for certain other freedoms. Right? You have the freedom to do things, and then you have the freedom to have things done to you. Or you have the freedom for things to happen to you. Right? You have the freedom to pursue wealth, and you also have the freedom to starve. So when we say we want freedom, it's like, well, you better be real specific about about what that freedom looks like, right? So, when you're real specific, that causes you to be more deliberate, right? So let's get into longer-term fasting: 24-hour fast, 36-hour fast, 72-hour fasts. If we're doing long-term fasts, during the long-term fast, we're not doing intense resistance training. Because we're not going to do training that we can't recover from because we're not nourished. We don't do that. So let's say we're doing a fast, a 36-hour fast. How do we deal with the hunger? The way that we deal with the hunger is understand that there are certain things that we can leverage against our appetite. One of the ones that I mentioned earlier was the matcha tea. Another one is electrolytes. If you're feeling a headache, lightheadedness, blurry vision, blah, 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 you may want to supplement with things like, for example, magnesium glycinate or magnesium taurate or magnesium threonate, some form of chelated magnesium, right? You may want to drink water with a pinch of sea salt and squeeze lime in it. You may want to drink 24 ounces of water with a tablespoon of chlorophyll, liquid chlorophyll in it. And then you also want to be active. So for example, doing the 3 to 5 mile walk. Because the hunger cues get calmed down when there's another stimulus that your body has to deal with, like the walking. So if you stay hydrated and you keep your electrolytes up and you keep busy, this helps against the hunger cravings. This will get you through. All right, so there's simple things that you can leverage like that. And then to calm your stomach down at night before bed, this is where we got things like ginger and turmeric tea. This is where we got things like ashwagandha, so we can calm us down and go to bed. Peppermint tea. Peppermint tea also is an appetite suppressant. Right, so you can drink peppermint tea in the evening as well. I think it's like peppermint tea and spearmint tea is like top 2 for that. And mint also helps you to lose weight as well as get better sleep. So it's a good option. Calms down the digestive tract. So if you're feeling real hunger pains where like your stomach is like really uncomfortable, you might have pains in your stomach, the mint can help with that. Fennel tea. It's another one. Right, so drinking fennel tea. Ladies, that's a good one. Fennel tea. Hibiscus tea. Right? Chai tea. Right? Lean into your teas. Drink your chlorophyll water. Right? Supplement with that magnesium. And that'll help you to have more mental alertness. That'll help you to have less hunger cravings, no lightheadedness, no headaches, that kind of thing. So these are things that you can leverage during your fast. And doing this over a prolonged period of time, fasting will be really easy to do. And as fasting becomes easier, when your body makes that hormonal shift, you can go from doing 16-hour fast to 20 to 24 to 36 to 72. Right? But you have to be patient with your body and allow your body to make that transition, right? And I'm talking about this now because now we're past talking about the conservative approach. The conservative approach is to recover from the prior aggressive approach. So you start with that fruit fast, then you go into a more conservative approach, then you go back into the more intense fasting. With the more intense fasting, you can have more fats in your diet when you do eat. This is the point that I'm at, right? So I can, like, on my eating days, I'll eat like 100 something grams of fat and like, you know, nearly 400 grams of carbs. Just eat like crazy. And still lose body fat on my fasting days, right? The only difference is that I'm doing it right now and I'm eating fully raw. I haven't eaten any cooked food. I haven't eaten any cooked food this year. Feeling great, right? Respecting the undulation of the volatility cycle. And you get your progress and you get your results from that, and then you come out of those deep fasts, right? Like alternate day fasting, which I've talked about in a prior stream. Running that for 12 weeks. It's like a good 8 to 12 weeks. You can lose a lot of body fat, you can improve your insulin sensitivity, give your gut a chance to heal, and all of this kind of stuff, right? Fasting is actually very beneficial for gut health, for your gut microbiome and everything like that. Good for your liver, good for your kidneys, good for your cardiovascular system, good for everything, good for your brain chemistry, all of that, right? The fasting is very medicinal. It's a big deal. And I'm leveraging my fasting, right, where I eat 4 days a week and I fast for 36 hours, 3 days a week. And I do that once a year, right? This is one of my one of my more aggressive strategies, and I do it once a year, just once. It's a good thing to do every year. You got your one favorite aggressive approach, you do it once a year. So after, let's say you do your alternate day fasting, you do your 12 weeks, you drop even more body fat, you get lean, your abs are starting to show and all of this. Your gut feels better, you sleep great and all this type of stuff. You're starting to really live your dream life, right? You're flexing on Instagram, right? You're showing off on Instagram, right? You acting up. Or as some of my folks like to say, cutting up, right? And some of your peers may say you doing too much, right? When you start really showing out. So then you come out of the alternate day fasting, and you come out of the alternate day fasting, and you do something like a more moderate approach. Maybe you go back into alternate, intermittent fasting, 16-8. Or you don't even do 16-8. Let's say you just have like instead of a 16-hour fast, you have a 12 or a 10-hour fast. But now it's time to really build muscle mass. And we're going to commit to hypertrophy, maximizing muscle growth for the rest of the year. And you may say, well, why would you want to do that? That is the next phase. That's where you step into being the 1%, right? Maximizing muscle growth is one of the best ways to permanently reverse type 2 diabetes. It's one of the best ways to permanently reverse high blood pressure, gut health disorders, all these types of things. Crohn's, colitis, diverticulitis, etc. Right? Permanently reverse fatty liver disease, kidney disease, and all of this. We do a well-rounded, balanced, whole food, plant-based diet. We go to standard macros, right? We're doing our 3 to 4 meals a day. We're doing our 60 or even 55% carbs. We're doing our 15 to 20% fats. We're doing our 16% protein, right? We start eating 1 to 2 hours after eating up. After waking up, we finish eating 4 to 6 hours before bed, right? And we're doing some heavy resistance training 3 to 4 days a week. And we're focused on getting strong and building muscle. We're doing that for the rest of the year, packing on that lean mass, right? And this is the exciting part of the body transformation, doing that. The reason why this is an aggressive approach is because the training is hard. Because you got to deal with the soreness. You may not feel stomach pains, but you're going to feel muscle pain. You can feel some soreness. And there may be days where it's time to train and you're like, I'm still sore. Or maybe you're a little tired. Maybe you didn't sleep that well the night before. Right? You may want to push that training session, because if you're really, really sore on the next day to train, I would say take another day. If you don't feel like you've recovered from the last session, you take a day off. You take an extra day and you train. A lot of people would disagree with me on that, but I'm like, look, we prioritize recovery. But I largely say that because I'm more prone to conservative. I'm more conservative, right? So you take that extra rest day. You don't start missing days in the gym. You don't start skipping training sessions and all of that. But you may need to push a training session, and then double down on your sleep quality and all of that type of stuff. Tighten up on your sleep and your schedule, right? Manage your time better. But in order to build that muscle, it's going to require hard work and a lot of consistency. You're going to have to be real consistent. And you got to learn how to push a set hard. If you have 16 reps in the tank, do not stop at 13. right? You get every last drop. That kind of training takes a lot of effort and willpower. It's different than being hungry and just telling your hunger cues no. This is an active form of resistance, right? And that's what makes it more aggressive. It's not as aggressive as like a 72-hour fast, but it's a different type. It's just as effective, and we all need to engage in that. Some of us can't. We may be wheelchair bound or extremely elderly or whatever the case is. But most people overwhelmingly can engage in this resistance training. It may look different from person to person, right? Maybe you have some knee pains. Maybe you have like some joint issues, compromised spine, or whatever the case is. So you may not be able to have the range of motion to train in a traditional fashion. But there should be some training that's happening. There should be some effort put in place. Right? Some people, their resistance training is just walking. Some people who are like really overweight or whatever the case is, and they walk for like 15 minutes and their heart rate is like 135, 140 in like the first 5 minutes. Right? So that may be their struggle. And if that's your struggle, that's fine. That's what your resistance training looks like. Right? Whatever you can do, you give it your best shot until it becomes easy. I've had people who struggle to get in 3,000 steps a day, and then they do 11,000, 12,000 like it's nothing. Right? Big shout out to UD. What used to be extremely difficult is now extremely easy. This is how it happens. It's the root of human progress. But you got to lead with the strategy and a respect for the spectrum and the volatility scale. Let's get into, and real quick before I end, let's get into supplementation, right? I know I'm going kind of long here because I tell you, there's a lot to talk about. But there are certain forms of supplementation that are very beneficial to improving your metabolism. All of this is stuff to improve your metabolism, all of it that I'm talking about. Let's talk about creatine. Creatine monohydrate, like a good 5 or 10 grams of creatine monohydrate per day. I would recommend this for any vegan who is trying to build muscle mass, especially if you're a raw vegan. I would recommend this too. I don't recommend it enough, quite honestly. But if you're really in resistance training, this is very beneficial. Creatine monohydrate is a naturally reoccurring molecule that your body creates on its own. If my memory serves me correctly, it is made from methionine, histamine, and cysteine. Right, these 3 amino acids, and together they come together to produce creatine monohydrate, or creatine, right? And this creatine improves the ATP production in your cells. So it's a way of supercharging your mitochondria. Now, this is good for your brain chemistry. This is good for training performance, muscle growth, creating an anabolic environment inside your muscles, and all this type of stuff. So if your goal is to improve your metabolism, to improve your mitochondrial function, and you're in that resistance training phase, this would be a good thing to supplement with. If you are fasting, one thing that I like to do during a fast is I like to drink a good 8 to 12 ounces of water with 3 grams of citrulline malate and 3 grams of beta-alanine in water. And these two things are very good for blood flow, right? These two things together will dilate your vascular system and light your nervous system up like a Christmas tree. It's a great way to oxygenate your cells and supercharge your metabolism, right? It's a great alternative to caffeine, right? You don't become resistant to it. If you are dealing with vaginal dryness or erectile dysfunction or something like that, these two things can be very beneficial for you, right? And then, of course, I mentioned the forms of chelated magnesium earlier, so I don't really necessarily need to go back over that. Is there another thing? I mentioned chlorophyll water. I think that about covers it for tonight. I think that's everything I want to touch on. So I think I can close out on that, but before I do, I'll close out on that. Let's get to some of these comments here, right? Because I know y'all probably asked me a bunch of questions and whatnot in here. So folks, if you haven't hit the like button yet, definitely hit the like button, like the stream. All right? Like the stream if you like the stream, as they say. Right? Let me catch up with my folks here. Let me lean in. Let's see. Share more fruits for muscle mass gain. Cantaloupe, mango, those are some good ones. Grapes is also a good one. Bananas, those are a few right there. Boom. Guava. Yep, guava, that's another one. Avocado, that's another one. Let's see. Maximize muscle mass for huge underweight issues. You know, what's funny is that when people are underweight, one of the biggest things that you got to do when you're underweight is you're underweight because you've got some cellular congestion. So when you follow some of the strategies that, you know, that I've suggested here, where like, let's say you do, that grape and watermelon, and you do that for 30 days, you might lose some weight, but you would improve your metabolism, so that it makes it easier for you to gain muscle afterwards. A great example of this would be, so for me personally, right? I've been doing the alternate day fasting since December 10th. I took a little partial break from it because I didn't want to drop my weight too low. So I started at like 160, 161, somewhere around there. And in the beginning of January, by like January 9th or something like that, I hit like 150, 148, somewhere around there. And I didn't really want to dip below 150. So I was like, you know, let me take a break, and I'm going to eat Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So I ate Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and I stepped on the scale Thursday, and I was back up to like 156, 157. Interestingly enough, my body fat percentage stayed the same. So I gained like 6 or nearly 7 pounds. I think it was like 6 pounds. And no body fat increase. Which means all of the glucose and the water and whatnot went straight to my muscle tissue. No fat storage. And that was because of the improved insulin sensitivity and my muscle cells and everything just being highly receptive to that energy. And my mitochondria being a lot more effective, right? So every element of my metabolism significantly improved as a result, right? Now I'm back on track, so the weight is trending back down, right? But essentially, you know, I've come to the conclusion that I can run this and hit like 145 in weight. But once I started eating again, I would go back up from 145, and then within like, let's say, a week to 2 weeks, I end up back at like 165. Right? So when my muscle glycogen is full, that's when I'm around like 165 pounds, maybe 170, depending on how I'm training. But it's a lot easier to gain muscle mass after you improve your metabolism. Right? But if you're underweight, one of the best things that you can do when you're underweight is resistance training. Lean into the resistance training to fix your metabolism. It's one of the best things you can do. So if you are underweight, your best strategies are the strategies that involve the 2 buckets, diet and training. Right? But if you're underweight, you're training, you're going to do your resistance training probably like 3, maybe 4 days a week, each training session being around 20 to 30 minutes. Right? Intense training. Those are your best bets. You would rely on the foods that feel the best on your gut. As a matter of fact, if you're really underweight, a great strategy would be that soup strategy. That's a good strategy. The legumes. So you do that red lentil soup with the leafy greens and mushrooms and all of that type of stuff, and then you combine that with the resistance training. Those are two strategies that really work together. Big pot of soup, split peas or red lentils, whatever the case is. I'm more partial to the red lentil soup, right? Get it all seasoned up, add all your greens and everything in there. And you'll get an abundance of protein from that, and then you do your resistance training. Those are your best bet. Right? If you are underweight and have gut health issues, underweight, gut health issues, and you need to gain lean mass, muscle mass, so you got to train. Because if you're underweight, you need to, and the only thing you can really increase is your lean mass. If you want to permanently fix your metabolism, and you want to live the rest of your life with an optimal metabolism, you got to train. You got to do the resistance training. You got to build that lean muscle mass. You did 31,000 steps today. Nuts. Absolutely nuts. You went on a Jesus walk. Look at that. You walked from Nazareth. Can you repeat the last two supplements to use during fasting? Citrulline, malate, and beta-alanine. Yeah, I do it once a year for 12 weeks. That's right, peppermint tea is the jam. High carb, low fat, vegan for weight loss, or high protein, low carb. High protein, low carb on a vegan diet is not really that great of a strategy. I mean, I wouldn't load up on the protein like that. I wouldn't do that. I don't think it's an optimal strategy personally. Because I mean, if you really want to do low carb and high protein, you're going to be eating a lot of processed foods and a lot of dietary fats. I don't really think that's a good idea, especially if you've got gut health issues. And chances are, if you're overweight and struggling to lose weight, it's because you have gut health issues. So I don't really think that's a great strategy. It can work for some people, but it doesn't work for most people. Let's say today you're talking about encouraging the body to metabolize fat. From your other videos, I learned if you have insulin resistance, to train your body to metabolize carbs. Can you please clarify? Yeah, so it's circumstantial, right? So on another video that you watch, right? So if I'm talking about improving insulin sensitivity, because on another video what I said, and a lot of times what I say is, if you're insulin resistant, you eat carbs to improve insulin sensitivity, right? Insulin sensitivity, the primary driver of insulin sensitivity is carbohydrate consumption, right? Your body adapts to carbohydrate consumption by increasing insulin sensitivity. Insulin resistance is a byproduct of having a fat dominant diet, right? Because why would you be insulin sensitive if you're having a diet that doesn't really require much insulin? That's like your body gaining muscle mass without you doing any of the training to incentivize your body to put on the muscle mass. Your body doesn't create adaptations for no reason. You have to do a thing to create the adaptation, right? So if I'm like, hey, you do like this raw fruit, like the watermelon and grapes thing or whatever, it's just all carbs. So what happens is your body has to adapt to the watermelon and the grapefruit and all the carbs and everything by improving insulin sensitivity. Right? So that's what I was talking about before. Now, and just let me go back over your question. Today you're talking about encouraging the body to metabolize fat. Yeah, so basically, when you are more insulin sensitive, this is an incentive to get your body to metabolize fat, right? But I'm talking about a particularly unique thing in this video, because I'm talking about being exhausted, tired, or being exhausted, obese, and starving, struggling against hunger, being leptin resistant. And that's the case in people with their insulin levels really high because they're insulin resistant. So when you're insulin resistant, your insulin level climbs, right? So what happens is your body doesn't really dip in and metabolize fats if your insulin's always elevated, right? Now, the more insulin sensitive you become, the less insulin your body needs in order to metabolize the carbohydrates or to increase glucose uptake, right? So your body doesn't need as much insulin because you're insulin sensitive, right? But there's a transitionary period because you can't just lean into that indefinitely, because essentially what happens is if you're always consuming the carbohydrates and your body runs through that glucose really quickly and you have warp speed gastric emptying, your body starts to lose the fat adaptation because of how much you rely on the carbohydrates. That is an adaptation that happens over time. So that's why I'm talking about you can't take one strategy and just run it perpetually forever. It doesn't work like that. That's what I'm talking about. So in this stream today, I've been talking about different strategies to cycle on and off from, right? So either you start conservative, then you get into an aggressive approach, then you go back to a conservative approach, then another aggressive approach, and back and forth. And so that's why I was talking about the whole managing the volatility scale or the volatility spectrum, but doing it deliberately and shrinking the volatility, right? The undulations. So, you have raw vegans where they do the fruit thing and they're like, I just do the fruits. I lost a ton of weight doing this. I feel amazing, whatever, right? And it works for them that way. The trade-off is the fact that they're so heavily adapted to glucose consumption that now, with their fats so low, their fat metabolism has been sacrificed as a result. And so those people may have to start, well, they often do have to start adding more fats into their diet, right? So earlier in the stream I mentioned, you want to start gradually introducing fats into your diet where you're consuming anywhere from 40 to 60 grams of fat, probably somewhere around 40 grams of fat, or even 35 grams of fat at least in your day, right, into your diet plan. So you start to switch to a more conservative approach and have a more balanced diet, right? So that's another thing that I was talking about earlier on, right? So if you lean really far into one approach, it oftentimes works, but you get diminishing returns, and the longer you do it, you sacrifice something, right? So you have to know when to get off. So that's what I've been talking about in this stream tonight. There are no magic bullets. That's one of the first things I said in this stream. There are no magic bullets, right? Every strategy is temporary. Is the 20-hour fast better for autophagy? Oh, by the way, TKM, let me know if I explain that, if that makes sense, if you follow me what I said there, so I can see if I can explain it in a more simplified way. Is the 20-hour fast better for autophagy? Not really. I think, you know, if you're going to really lean into autophagy and you're going to do a 20-hour fast, you're going to have to leverage resistance training in order to really push your body into that autophagy. A 20-hour fast on its own isn't really going to do it. Let's see. Thank you for this, dear brother. Much respect to you for helping all of us. Oh, definitely. I'm both feet in. Appreciate you tuning up for the stream. Or showing up for the stream and tuning in. What's going on, Dina? If you water fast, can you drink tea? Yes. I encourage it. Pause? Did I say something sassy-wassy? I'm going to give it a try again this week. I'm finally tired of Fast food. No longer craving it. Oh, yeah, get off that fast food. That's food poisoning. What is the best thing to eat or take to recover good bacteria after being given antibiotics and being sick? Antibiotics is brutal on the gut. My God. You know what's funny is that a lot of people who struggle with gut health issues, a lot of the times it's because they had prolonged bouts of antibiotics. I would definitely recommend a probiotic and a whole food plant-based diet to get those prebiotics that feed the probiotics. Also, not to mention, aside from taking a probiotic, but also having probiotic-rich foods like, you know, coconut yogurt, cashew yogurt, sauerkraut, kimchi, pickles, kombucha, things like that, miso. Those are also probiotic-rich foods. If you're going to get foods like that, make sure you get them from the refrigerated aisle. All right. What is the best thing to eat eat or take to recover? Oh, I answered that. I did alternate day fasting last year, and it was very easy. But what made me stop wasn't because I was hungry. I'm just addicted to the taste of fast food. Oh, okay, gotcha. Judy, what's going on? Good to see you in here. Eat that stored fat. True. We said, I know this is off topic, but I'm just wondering if you can touch on resistance training benefits. How long is the ideal time to exercise? So yeah, I touched on some of the benefits earlier in the stream. It's a great way to train your mitochondria, push your body into autophagy, push your body to better metabolize fat for energy, and so that assists in weight loss. Also bolsters your immune system because your body responds. So resistance training is an acute stressor. So resistance training is very intense. It's very intense, and it's inflammatory, actually, right? Lifting weights or training with resistance bands or whatever, really pushing your body hard, it is inflammatory. It is catabolic, meaning there will be cellular damage or breakdown. So it puts your body in a catabolic state, and your body hyper responds to that catabolism. So you get autophagy, you get a release of brain-derived neurotropic factor, you get a release of growth hormone and all of these things, and your body leverages glutathione, right, which is your body's natural antioxidant. And so your body overcorrects against the inflammation that you've incurred as a result of the resistance training. So what happens is this puts your body into an anabolic state, and then combined with food, your body soaks up all the nutrients a lot more effectively. And this is how you build your gut, your immune system. You have stronger, more prevalent mitochondria, insulin sensitivity, and of course, stronger bones, muscle tissue, and things like that, right? So those are the benefits there. Basically, resistance training is medicinal. It can add years to your life. Also, interesting thing to resistance training adds, it strengthens your bones in two ways. It makes the outer layer of your bones harder, and it makes the inner layer of your bones more resistant against tensile force. So bones are kind of, they're supposed to be able to bend a little bit. So even if the outer layer of your bones is really hard, but if it's not able to bend a little bit, it'll snap. So the resistance training reinforces your bones to give your bones that reinforcement against tensile stress, so your bone can give a little bit so that it doesn't break. Right? So you know the saying, if you don't learn how to bend, you'll break. All right, let's see. Is it okay to do a grape cleanse this time of the year? I can only find seedless grapes. I would rather you do seedless than no grapes at all. Humble request to share some more raw fruits for better gut health issue. Oh, sour sop. Yeah, if you can get sour sop, that's a good one. Alright. Alright, I think I got to all the questions here. Oh, here we go. Hold on. Let me find it here. Hold on. Because we got some new questions here now. I just got on the live, but if you're trying to lose weight and complete a 4-day dry fast and eat 3 days and weight training, what kind of diet do you recommend? Well, first of all, I wouldn't recommend a dry fast. Generally, I'm against anything that's dehydrating. Right, so yeah, I wouldn't do a dry fast. If you're gonna do a dry fast, you better follow that up with some salt and you want to get hydrated. Watery fruits and salt. But yeah, I mean, if you're doing a prolonged fast, that's like 7 days or whatever, you got to break your fast slowly, right? So before you start eating, you're probably going to want to have a bit more of that. You're going to have the water with the salt, and then gradually start having some small servings of things that are quite possibly more protein rich. So you may want to break your fast with something like coconut yogurt and blueberries with some hemp seeds or something like that. But eat slow. Take your time. Let's see. Using one or the other is a healing strategy depending on the situation, but not to be used to the extreme long term. Exactly. Hashimoto's, what foods to stay away from? Generally acidic foods that are high in saturated fat. So like eggs, pork, really meat in general, cooking with oil. That's problematic. Definitely cooking with oil is problematic. Alcohol. Yeah. Actually, people with Hashimoto's do very well with fasting. So you may want to leverage things like rolling fasts, right? So doing like 72-hour fasts and things, that can be really beneficial. So you have 4 days of eating followed by 3 days of fasting, right? So that can actually be a great benefit too. The grape fast, right? The grape and watermelon strategy, that also works very well. And then that soup strategy, right? With the red lentil soup with all the seasonings and whatnot, that also works very well. Is rice okay or should, well, depends, right? Rice generally speaking is okay, but I wouldn't really eat rice in the aggressive strategies. Right? If you have gut health issues, I don't really know if I would do, like rice particularly. I think there are other foods that are a bit better on your gut or more beneficial. So like instead of doing rice, I would probably do like buckwheat, right? I might do that instead, or kamut. But it depends on the strategy. If you're doing like a fasting strategy, then heavier foods like that could be fine. Oh, let's see. I wake up at 3 to 3:30. Karen, what's going on? Good to see you in here. I wake up 3 to 3:30 and work out at 5:30, but generally don't break my fast until 8 or 8:30. My first meal is fruit. Is there anything I need to change? I would have to go and look at your plan. Because basically you're eating like 3 hours after the training session. But your training sessions, you've been hitting that rebounder, so you're probably done by like 6:30 or so. So actually 8 o'clock is pretty legit. I would say 8 o'clock is a fine time to break it. 7:30, 8 o'clock, somewhere around there. I think that's fine. And then with the fruits and stuff getting rehydrated, yeah, that's fine. If you were to change anything, I would probably say to have the more dense meal. To have the more dense meal first, and then have the fruits after. that. Let's see. Been fasting a year, can't lose weight and feel exhausted. What do you mean you've been fasting a year? What kind of fasting you doing? There's no way you fast for a year. That's crazy. So yeah, I would have to know more in order to be able to answer that question. I heard cruciferous veggies would cause more damage to my goiter. Is this true? Not that I know of, no. I don't necessarily know why that would be the case. Oh, you've been doing OMAD? Yeah, you can do OMAD and actually not lose weight. It depends on what you're eating within that one meal. Also, when it comes to OMAD, so okay, let me touch on this right quick. I'm going a little late now, but and I'll end on this. And I'll probably gonna have to do another video on OMAD. And the reason why I don't really advocate for OMAD very much is because if you're going to do OMAD, the meal has to be a very robust and diverse meal. I have put together OMAD plans before, and the plan is very diverse. I'm talking about like 10 different foods within that one meal. So that one meal, you could have sweet potato in there, cashews, pumpkin seed kernels, chickpeas, you know, kasha, you know, broccoli, sliced avocado, diced onion, bell pepper, like, you know, just all really loading it up. Nice big Buddha bowl doing that. But if you're like, if the meal isn't structured right, there could be some holes there, right? Also, it depends. Are you doing the resistance training while OMAD? OMAD isn't really going to necessarily work very effectively if you're not exercising. Because in order to lose weight, you have to train your mitochondria. Like, the fasting isn't really like a magic bullet. The longer you do OMAD, essentially your body gets used to it, right? And so you get diminishing returns, right? So it depends on how the meal is structured. It depends on whether you're exercising or not, because you still have to train your mitochondria. And then also you can't be engaging in food poisoning while with the one meal. So there's that too. So yeah, there's a lot of factors that come into play. Is it possible to get stupid shredded on a high raw vegan diet? To give an example of Abercrombie and Fitch model. Yeah, yes, it is possible. Yeah, I would say so. I mean, yeah, it is very possible to do. And 72-hour fast every 3 months. What happened? 4 days a week, hike, and 8 clean. Is it, what, a 72-hour fast every 3 months? 4 days a week, hike and 8 clean? Were you fasting on the 4 days a week? Yeah, we would probably have to have a more in-depth conversation, because there's some things I'm missing here. There could be some holes. Can you gain weight or mass on OMAD? I mean, it's possible. It'd be very difficult to do. It's possible. It depends on what that one meal looks like, and it depends on what kind of training you're doing. Yes, plus OMAD. I've never heard of anybody not being able to lose weight on OMAD. There's something going on there. So I would have to see, I would have to get more history. It seems like a longer conversation, because we'd have to talk about what food choices you have there. We'd have to talk about, you know, if you've ever taken a blood test, you know, what's your fasted blood sugar, you know, this type of thing. So how old you are, this. So I would need a bit more data. So that seems like a more lengthy conversation. Because there's a lot of other data. In order for me to really come to a solid conclusion, I would have to know other information. But yeah, I'm not like a big proponent of OMAD though, generally speaking. I think that there's other things that are more effective to do. Oh, you lost weight, but you stopped losing weight. Oh, okay, yeah, so diminishing returns. So you probably lost the weight in the beginning, and then the longer you do it, you plateaued, and then that was that. What I've been talking about on this stream is there are no magic bullets. There is no strategy that you can deploy that will just yield you perpetual gains. There is diminishing returns, so you would have to change your strategy over time, right? So you would have to have like a quarterly strategy, right? And manage the undulating curves of the volatility scale deliberately. How much fruit do you need to gain weight? Oh, that depends on the person. That's a very individualized thing, right? Because I could say 16 to 20 pounds of fruit a day as a general recommendation. All right, folks, it's pushing up on my bedtime. It's getting late here. I'm gonna end on this. I put a link to book a call with me. If you have some complex issues, you need some help, some guidance, you need coaching, I put a link in the description of this video to book a call with me, right? We have an hour. It's a 60-minute call. Get on a video chat and we can talk through all of your issues. We can get more of your history so you can get a more in-depth, personalized answer to your issues. And I can also record the call, right? And then just send you a copy of the call as a video for the call. You can download it and rewatch it and all that kind of stuff. I also put a link in the description to the 12-week mentorship that I'm running. So basically, for my Tribe by Noir members, you get access to all of my courses as well as my Thursday member streams. So every Thursday, I get together and I talk with all of my tribe members in my private mentoring group. So you get access to my training plans, my fasting course, my high raw vegan nutrition guide, recipes, exercise video tutorials, all that kind of stuff. My Discord, recipes. I said recipes already. Supplement suggestions, and of course those streams. And then I record those member streams, and I post the replays for members to rewatch. Right, so they're accessible on the site as well as in the Discord. So yeah, that is pretty much the deal there. And then I also do personalized coaching. So if you want to do that, you can also do that as well. So links in the description. I appreciate y'all for tuning in tonight on the Monday night live stream. I will be back on here on the YouTube for another Monday night live next Monday. Talk to y'all. Have a good one. Get some rest.